And we're live.
Hello, welcome to Diploma Sports, an intelligent intersection of sports and politics. My name is SC. On the line, I have Ghost, and we also have a special guest who will hopefully be joining us, my friend Steven. First, hello, Ghost.
Hey, how's it going, SC?
I'm doing well. Why don't you tell all of our 5 listeners how they can find us today?
So, as you know, we are Diploma Sports. We talk about mainly politics and sports, but this looks like we're having a decidedly more sports podcast tonight. So you can, of course, find us over on Facebook at Diploma Sports on our Facebook page. You can check us out on Twitter at Diploma_sports. You can tweet us there if you have any questions or any corrections for us. You can also find us on Gab. We are also at Diploma_sports on Gab. And you can find us on Minds at Diploma_sports, all the same. And so Steven, introduce yourself. We haven't met you yet.
Guys, I'm Steven. I'm in the Bay Area. Just thanks for having me on the show. Some sports and politics.
And just as to the listeners, Steven is one of my old friends from college. We actually met during orientation, and we have been having enlightening conversations ever since. So I'm happy to bring him on board. Today we are going to be having a pretty light discussion. We're not going to be arguing over immigration, most likely, or anything of that nature. We're going to be discussing 2016 and the year that was, from way too many famous deaths, to the election of Donald Trump. It's been a crazy year. The Cubs and the Cavaliers are champions, which is also crazy. I don't know which one is less crazy. That'll probably be one of our questions for later. This has definitely been a year to remember or forget, depending on who you ask. So that's just what we're going to start with. Let's start with the year that was in sports, because it has certainly been a crazy year. As I said, the Cubs and the Cavs have won. We had the armless Peyton Manning defeat the Panthers. Arguably a much worse team lost, or a much worse team won at the Super Bowl than should have. I'm sorry, say that again?
Did you watch the Panthers this year? I mean,
different story, different year. I mean, they lost their corner, so I mean,
yeah, they did lose some key personnel, but still.
But yeah, and that brings up one of the craziest topics, and this is a topic that neither Ghost or I know that much about. So, Steven, why don't you tell us a little bit about Leicester City and their miraculous win this year in the Premier League?
You guys, so this is kind of crazy for soccer and English Premier League, as well as sports and betting. So I'm happy to hear you guys' input on it. So Leicester City came into the Premier League this year from a second-tier league. After 132 years of not winning a championship, bookies positioned them to win at 1 to 5,000 odds to win the Premier League, and they did. The odds of winning or Elvis being alive is 1 to 2,000, and discovering the Loch Ness Monster is 1 to 500. So this kind of is the craziest thing to happen in soccer. People are looking at Leicester City as how do they do it with such a low-costing roster, and the response to the sports betting world is kind of taking on how they place bets, losing $25 million plus.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. My first initial thought, and it kind of goes to your question about how did they do it, and I think it's a broader question of has this year proven that sports is indeed very random? Is it a matter of maybe we think we know too much about these people, and ultimately professionals are professionals, and any given day someone can actually literally pull off a miracle, and I mean we see this. I mean that's, to be honest, probably one of the reasons I like sports the most. Why I enjoy it so much is because of these upsets and these possibilities. What are your thoughts on this, Ghost?
Well, I'm actually curious if maybe they've figured out like a Moneyball type solution to building the most efficient roster. Like maybe they're using advanced metrics or advanced statistics, like maybe like lateral speed on players, or maybe their coaching is superior. I mean, I have no interest in soccer personally. This is my personal disclaimer. But I mean, the fascinating part about this completely outmatched team as we thought was outmatched by the odds, coming up with a way to beat these way overpriced relative to that, these way, teams that pay
Manchester
more
United,
than
Chelsea, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, all those names that sound like people names and cities to me. But I'm interested in just, ancillary manner, just like how they did it. What is it? Was it just dumb luck? Did they just make shots when they had it? Did like the ball roll their way? Did the right thing happen at the right time, or did they figure out a better solution for playing soccer?
I think there's a combination between both of your guys' response, asking the question, like, how far does metrics play a role in sports and in betting? And can we really analyze every statistic and every move of a player, like you said, lateral speed and all these weird nuances in all these different sports to find the edge in recruiting and also determining game outcomes?
Yeah, well, transitioning to American sports, I think if you examine the Cavaliers winning and the Cubs winning, it's two different scenarios, but I think they kind of highlight both sides of it. On one side, you have the Cubs, who were clearly the best team this year. They, for all intents and purposes, should have won, and they did. It really wasn't a surprise they were favored at the beginning of the year. And then you look at a team like the Cavaliers. Now, the Cavaliers were the best team in the East, and everybody knew that. But ultimately, they were going against history. They were going against, arguably, in my opinion, the best team I've ever seen in that Golden State team. And now they're probably even better with Kevin Durant. But without even Kevin Durant, they were literally just breaking all of the records and looking like they were on pace to coast. And it seemed to be that just, the will of LeBron James. And it seems like such a cliche thing that people don't talk about, but really it was two players, as him and Kyrie, who just decided that they were going to be the best players on the court. And I wonder if it's a similar thing in soccer as well. As someone who doesn't know that much about it, I wonder if they just had a couple players that were just, we talk about the clutch gene, but I wonder if there was any sort of factor there, if this was just something crazy and will never happen again.
No, there is. They actually do have a player on the team. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he's a rags to riches type of guy that they found playing like a pickup game, and then 4 years later, here he is leading the team with the most amount of goals and winning the league. I think there's a movie coming out about him. So they do have some inspiration, and I think it is a sports miracle. And to understand, it's a blend of coaching, timing, and kind of like the 2004 Pistons or something, where everyone just comes together and just bonds under there's no superstar really in any capacity.
Go
ahead.
I think the 2004 Pistons is just a combination of that suffocating defense. I mean, you've got Ben Wallace in his prime, one of the best paint protectors, of that era for sure. Not a great offensive player, but just a great defensive player. You got Rasheed Wallace, great shooter, good player, and then you got Rip and Chauncey, who are both good clutch. They're good like clutch shooters.
True.
Yeah, I mean, they had a good team, no doubt, but like everything was clicking and they were making their shots, and that was a good Lakers team they played.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not the most appropriate reference, but the 04 Pistons is one of my favorite teams, so I'm just showing favoritism there.
I think it works because ultimately that they were kind of the last team before the super team era, if you will. I mean, we pretty much are in that era. Now, you pretty much need 3 top 15, top 20 players in the NBA now to win a championship. I mean, I think that's pretty evident. You can't win with just LeBron. You have to have LeBron and Kyrie, and then probably Kevin Love too.
I would disagree with that, actually.
Well,
all right.
I would say the last teams that were those Mavericks teams that Dirk led.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. The Mavericks team that beat LeBron.
You're not wrong that we are in the era of super teams, but Dirk took a bunch of role players. He had they like Sean Marion in his twilight, and Vince Carter, I think, in his twilight as well. But maybe, no, I don't think I'm not sure it was Vince Carter. But he had a couple guys in his twilight, and JJ.
Yeah, that was the LeBron's first Miami year.
Oh yes.
I mean, to be fair, you can kind of blame LeBron for the reason they lost that series, anyway. So.
Yeah. But LeBron was the reason why they won this year, and they did something magical. Crazy. Talk about sports miracles and the things. The city of Cleveland has just gone through one roller coaster. Like, how they're relevant is because of sports and what's happened to them this year from sports. Like, I'm not sure how they feel about it. Winning in basketball and losing in baseball so far, like the exact same way.
Yeah, well, and it's crazy too. I mean, to think of how dreadful the Browns are. I mean, I feel like Cleveland can't complain too much this year, but they also avoided 0-16. So I mean, they really can't complain too much at this.
It's a miracle.
I donated to that parade. I don't know if you guys knew that they had a GoFundMe page for the 0-16 Cleveland Browns parade. It was a legitimate thing. It raised like $4,000.
Well, the best part for the Browns is not only do they not go victoryless, the Niners managed to finally win another game against their old beating board now,
Dude,
the Rams.
I was at that game in LA, baby. That was awesome. And the game was dreadful till about the last minute, you could say.
Yeah, but you're a Niners fan. Why would you want them to win that game? Now they don't have the first. They had a chance at the first pick, and now they have the second
They
pick.
could have stolen it from Cleveland.
I'd rather have a chance at glory.
Fair enough. I still want the Eagles to do the
Niner Nation, like we should do better in drafting and a lot of other things. You know, I have a lot of confidence in our team and our management, and I hope Chip Kelly stays around. You know?
I think he's staying. I don't think they'll fire him after 1 year. I mean, if they start out 0-5, he'll get fired, but I think he gets another year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Niners need a lot of help and work, but yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's it can turn around if they put the faith in there.
Or if they just play the Rams 16 times a year.
I'm into that, man. I wouldn't mind no traveling.
So yeah, actually, this is interesting. I think we've covered the miracles in sports. We can certainly go back to sports because I want to get your guys' predictions and things. But let's focus on the year that was at this point, and then we'll kind of jump ahead to 2017. And let's talk about everybody's favorite 49er, Colin Kaepernick, who basically started this whole discussion. Even though, to be fair, that discussion should have been going on a lot earlier. But I think a lot of football fans who are generally immune to understanding world issues really had this thrown in their face. And ultimately, I've expressed this before on the podcast. I respect what Kaepernick's doing. I hate that he didn't vote. And there are certain other issues that he's said and stood for that I shake my head at. And there's things that he's done that I don't necessarily wholly agree with. But I think that he is certainly brave, to say the least. And I think that this 2016 is also kind of the year where we've had interesting protests and lots of interesting backlash from those protests on social media. Ghost, you want to share your thoughts real quick on?
Just jokingly, let me start. Do you support the frying of pigs in do you support the frying of cops like pigs in a blanket?
Well, no, obviously, but I get the joke. I mean, cops are generally considered pigs. It's that's a joke.
I know. I'm just having fun with it. Now, on the other hand, I think Colin Kaepernick, I think he was actually his choice not to vote, I think, was actually a very he laid out, he said it himself, he thought Trump is a racist, and he says Hillary Clinton is a criminal. And, he didn't vote for a criminal. Honestly, that's one of the few things I respect him for, is that he did vote his conscience.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I understand. I think he gave a decent enough defense of it. I guess my whole thing is as someone who works in politics and wants to be in politics one day, I believe that if you actually want to be for change, you still have to participate in the process, even if you are given a choice between a turd sandwich and a giant douche, or whatever the South Park reference is.
Change was 4 more years of Obama with a vagina, basically. That's your definition of change.
Why does change? My question is, why does change only happen on the federal level? Everyone always talks about voting. Yes, don't vote for the president. I can agree with that. But to not vote for your local council person who's affecting the policies in your community and all those things, and to rally. See, to me, what bothers me, or I like to understand further, I know Colin does a lot of work in the community, and I think that's awesome. But to me, it's like, have a voice and make local change, because that's something that can be impactful.
As a permanent advocate for the smallest of small government, I perfectly agree with you. I think the best way to work with your government is on the local level and try to make, changes within the context of what the government is allowed to do and not allowed to do within your own community, because you, as a citizen of that community, know what's best for that community more than anyone in Washington, more than anyone in Sacramento. You know what's best for your community.
Well, yeah.
Right.
No, go ahead, Stephen.
No, that was pretty much just going to agree with that. I would say, vote local if you want to actually do something positive for your community, and that's where I think that he has a great potential to influence the local community and make changes in all the different departments, and use that power. If he starts winning, it can mean even more.
Yeah, no, winning helps. If he was 11-5, people wouldn't really care nearly this much, and they wouldn't be nearly as mean.
I do have some commentary though about the unfortunate reality of local elections is that it's so hard to pay attention to. I mean, like I could not name you more than 2 of the candidates in my local. I probably could. I can't name them now. I mean, I voted in my local elections, but like, it's hard. Like, people are not civically active in local elections. It's not sexy. It's not exciting, and it's like there's not like a good news source for it. Like NPR will do a report on it like once a month, and I just listen to NPR usually to get mad, but I have it on a lot of the time.
And that's where, to me, athletes have such incredible potential because they're on Twitter. Look what Donald Trump has effectively communicated. So it's
fake or not, he's definitely made people understand his side or his viewpoints.
So my thing is that if he paid attention to it, and then he created he became the outlet, and think of all the people it could reach. They could always ignore it,
Well, I think the interesting thing about Donald Trump is that if you know anything about his campaign, before he ran it, he literally paid someone to listen to conservative talk radio for 2 years. He paid someone to do that, take notes, and come up with a strategy to appeal to Republicans in the Rust Belt in particular. Like, he created his whole strategy around listening to what his party wanted, and it worked.
Yeah, he became a voice for people that really haven't had a voice in a long time. Back to the Colin Kaepernick thing. I guess I have my first thought, and this kind of is more about the elections actually. Is I do think it is pretty sad. To the point of people don't seem to have information about local elections. I mean, CNN spends 23 and a half hours a day talking about the presidential election, but there aren't any mentions, even on local news, there isn't really any mentions of it. And I mean, I really think, as we talked about in our last podcast, that's really the media letting us down. The media can sort of paint a narrative going forward about these local elections, and they can actually give it credence and actually make people understand that these are important. I think it would have been effective if Colin Kaepernick had mentioned more of that instead of, rather than talking about the presidential election and said, oh, the presidential election, they're both bad choices. I don't choose that, but I still voted in my local election, et cetera, et cetera. I guess my main question to you two is, as far as these types of protests are concerned, as far as the type of, these sort of unique ways of either kneeling or wearing Black Lives Matter shirts in warm-ups before a game or anything of that nature. I mean, I do question whether it is effective. I certainly respect people who are attempting to do it. But I feel like the people that are against these type of changes are the very people that are watching these sports and are getting mad at you for talking about these said things during their sacred, basically in sports, it's kind of it's supposed to be an escape. It's supposed to be something where we don't talk about these things.
It's supposed to not be political.
Yeah, and while I disagree with that, and I think we should always be talking about things that are more important.
That's my opinion. I'm just saying that's what most people watch sports. They want to get away from. It's like, no, I don't want. We talk about politics all the time. Let's just have a bunch of reality. A bunch of men get on a field and see who's better.
Well, and also sports is merit-based, or it's perceived to be merit-based. We look at politics as corrupt and who has more money and all of these sort of things. It's kind of a game. Whereas with sports, it's the better team won. They tackled better.
LeBron makes more money than JJ Barea.
Yeah, because he deserves to make more. So I don't know. I do question. I'm happy that athletes are using this platform, and I believe athletes like LeBron and Chris Paul are more effective because they're more well liked in the community than, say, Colin Kaepernick. But I still I don't know. It's hard because I have so many thoughts because of the whole election, and maybe we can start transitioning into talking about the greatest upset.
Well, before we leave sports, I remember when Kurt Schilling talked about politics a couple years back, and he was blasted by the media.
Mm-hmm.
He's still doing it. He says he's going to run.
Huh? Yes. No, he is. But I remember when he initially talked about it, people were furious. People were up in arms. Like, how dare you bring that discussion in? How dare you talk about your opinions? So, like, they were mad at Kurt Schilling when he brought politics up. They didn't care. Before that, he was bloody sock hero of Boston. After that, they were like, oh, yeah, Kurt Schilling.
Well, and I wonder, too, is that because of his beliefs? I can't believe I'm saying this. Is there somewhat of a liberal bias when it comes to sports and which opinions get credence and get mentioned? Because obviously if you have somebody who's saying, I support gay rights, that's not going to get taken negatively. But if you have someone who says, I support the marriage of a man and a woman, they're going to get all sorts of backlash. Rightfully so, I would argue, but still, I don't know.
Depends where you are. It depends where you are in that situation, on that stance, I think.
Well, I mean, I think there is a liberal bias. Well, I wouldn't even say liberal. I'd say more progressive bias just in entertainment in general. I mean, they're generally the people who are in control of media or own sport or big in like ESPN or Disney. They generally have a very strong bias themselves. I get that. I mean, I think that changes the lens with which we view athletes. And honestly, I'd rather just, let's, maybe not talk about sports during a game. How about just support charities, speak at their events, off the clock, and then just do your job on the field. Like I know that might sound like a bit more cynical, but I think you can do a lot of good. When you're not distracted by the competition on the field.
I think that the NFL, if the NFL wanted to, they could set the standard and rules to prohibit this.
Well, I mean, they regulate what socks you can wear and how high you can wear your socks, and like
Right, I mean-
what your celebration can be, or like you can't high five like more than two people, or it's like all the asinine things, and then it's like this. No, perfectly okay, and I get it. They don't want to get blasted.
I agree with the purity of the sport context and how that can irritate people, but I also completely understand the athlete's position. Trevor Noah asked Tommy Lauren a very interesting question she couldn't answer, and it was how do black people protest in America?
By not burning down black-owned businesses, by not destroying the community, by calling out people who do bad things in your name. I mean, that's all we ask.
But he said, when we take a knee, during the game, we get yelled at when we protest, or when we march.
I'm not hearing that much outrage over people taking it. People are just now kind of like.
There's a lot of outrage over him taking it. People are saying they don't watch the NFL anymore. Oh, that's completely overblown.
And I'm not trying to go and hash our the conversation he had and replay those arguments, but just bringing up the point of like it's still not a very clear. There's not a clear defined way to do it. Will you agree on that? And that there's a lot of backlash in any way you do it.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that's easy for anyone else, but it's like
one of the things. Oh, if I can get onto your topic, I agree. There has been this in the past, definitely. Like the reason why we have the Brady Bill in California is because black people marched on the Capitol in California, and Reagan wanted to take guns away from them. This is one of the many reasons I have huge issues with Reagan. Besides the fact he's all for amnesty, besides the fact he taxed tips and put all these ridiculous taxes. I have huge issues, but that one is just like, wait, so you took away our gun rights because black people took guns and protested like our citizens are allowed to and guaranteed by the Constitution. That to push that agenda for that reason just infuriates me.
Wow. Well, we all look like Reagan here. That's great.
And Bush unfortunately kept the amnesty tendencies of Reagan as well. It's infuriating.
Well,
this is why Trump is so refreshing. That's the hard part, is that I need a reality TV star to go and push for some agendas that I want. It's like, he's not my ideal candidate. He's not Rand Paul or something.
Can I ask you guys a question? Kind of blending Trump and Kaepernick. Going back to Kaepernick's skill, I think Trump pulled the Kaepernick. When the entire Republican nomination got benched, essentially Alex Smith in a way, Trump came in, and the NFL had no idea what to do during the playoffs. He almost won a Super Bowl.
Analogy.
Yeah, he literally almost won a Super Bowl. I mean, they should have won. If the lights hadn't gone out at that Super Bowl, they probably would have won that game.
So, I think the lights going out actually saved them in a lot of ways, but
they hadn't scored at that point.
Oh yeah, that's true. I know. I'm thinking of the wrong game.
The Ravens were going to own them, but So the lights didn't go out on Trump. He won. Our defense is going to figure it out, said the media, and Congress, the Democrats, going to be able to figure out his playbook and understand how to work with him as well as, defend against him.
This is an excellent.
I think ultimately they was.
First, I have some insight on this because.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So I've been calling since I was about 50% confident in July after the RNC that he would win the election, and after they announced the reopening of the investigation into Hillary Clinton, that's when I was assured that he was going to win the election. That's when I knew. That was just like, okay, it's over. She's done. And I think what the Democrats don't understand, and haven't understood for a while, you can see this in like the 1,000 Senate and House and local seats they've lost over Obama's term. It's that they don't understand how they don't understand like what the country wants. I don't think, and I think most of all is that they have not been selling a message. And when they talk about the economy, they say, "Oh, Trump's inheriting a great economy." For some, the economy is not great for a lot of people. There's a great website, Shadow Statistics, which goes over like what the actual employment rate is if you include discouraged workers and people who are essentially out of the labor and people who have left the labor force. And the official rate is like 5%, which is like includes like if you aren't working for 6 months, as soon as you're off unemployment, you're not considered unemployed, but you're not working. I think we've had the highest level of people not in the labor force since the Great Depression right now.
Yeah,
so those people are suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Those people are suffering, and Obama's going out there like he scored a touchdown. Like, look, I have unemployment. Yeah, you have unemployment because you have the benefits period. There's less people on the roll, and there are more people taking more people are taking more jobs for less money than they were before, and their quality of life is going down. And the coasts where we live are fine. I think we're doing great because people will come back no matter what. Our house prices are going to go back, but places like Detroit and Chicago. Once people leave those, they're hollowing out, and the people are leaving. They're taking their businesses.
Well, my one pushback on your overall point is I think you're placing way too much emphasis on Obama, both in him taking credit and him and also blaming him. I mean, I think this is obviously the most dysfunctional Congress we've ever had. They have a lower approval rating than Nickelback, which is a horrible band. And basically he hasn't been able. It'd be one thing if Obama had his agenda and was able to pass and get everything done that he wanted to, but he's been basically splintered on every route that he's taken. And I mean, that's why I still respect Obama as president. I think that he navigated through a very tricky situation. And that's why I pushed back on your comment earlier about, Hillary's it's just Obama with a vagina for 4 more years. I mean, anybody who thinks of progress, you think of progress as being sort of slow and gradual. I mean, in 2016 you accomplished some things, 2017 you accomplished others. I mean, I think the dangerous part with Trump, and this is sort of my fear moving forward, is that he's just going to basically we're moving the rock slowly uphill, and he's just going to kick it and knock it all the way back down with Supreme Court nominations and the people that he's appointing to run his cabinet. I mean, it's very frightening. So, I mean, I think ultimately, and obviously we're getting a little bit off track here, but 2017, we should be looking to make gradual change and make things, slowly better, like we did, I would say, in, previous years leading up to it.
Well, on the point of Obama, I don't know if we need to change topics, but
we'll just
your thoughts on this as well.
I mean, it's to me, I look at, he could be blundering the statistics easily and, moving up the line and reducing people. But there's also, he's only been there for 8 years. So I look at what has he done to help people during that time in those neighborhoods? Have policies been put in place that are helpful, or has he been able to try to implement the right policies? Because a lot of it's historic. If it's a bad neighborhood like Detroit has been suffering for generations. So to say, what have you done in 8 years? It's like, well, it's really hard to restore that spot, considering.
Well, my argument wasn't that he was the one that should have saved him. I mean, you have to remember, Detroit's had Democratic politicians for decades. That's not fair to say that Detroit, the Rust Belt in general, is not benefiting from his macroeconomic policy. The recovery disproportionately did not help them. Was what my argument was. Detroit is just a cluster, a mess itself. It was probably a bad choice. Right.
And I mean, Republicans and Democrats are both to blame for the problems in Detroit and Chicago over the last, ever. So I guess getting back to topic, let's talk about the biggest upset of the year. I would argue, other than Leicester City, that's clearly the biggest upset of the year. But I'd say the other biggest upset of the year, where my companion here, Ghost, has said that he saw it coming, but I think he's full of it. I don't think anybody saw this coming. We now do have Donald J. Trump as our president.
Back to our Facebook messages. I said when the second announcement that he was going to win.
No, you called it. I just thought you were being overly confident, but you were. You definitely called it. So now, I mean, ultimately, I think 2016, we can sum it up as the year of Trump. I think that sums it up well. We not only had the craziest American presidential election I think we've ever had, along with all of these crazy sports upsets and all these crazy franchises breaking through. I mean, this is clearly the year of Trump, the year of upsets. And
I think you're really underselling the movement of populism that Trump embodied in America, because you're completely leaving out Brexit, which was a huge populist move away from globalization and centralized power, and then also the no vote in Italy, the referendum that was going to basically abolish state powers and basically give them all to the federal government.
Yeah, maybe I'm underselling it. I guess my reason for doing that is I think that Brexit was a horrible decision. I think that electing Donald Trump was a horrible decision because you can't the amount of travel. The benefit of the European Union is that you can go from country to country without having to get new visas or to travel this. If you want to work in Switzerland, you can live in England and work in Switzerland technically. Not that people would do that, but you can do that. And this severely limits that. I mean, granted, they are already still on the pound, but this is going to severely hurt England's economy. This is going to hurt the United Kingdom. It's probably not even going to be the United Kingdom anymore. It's going to be, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, etc.
I got to push back on that. I got to push back on that.
Yeah, me too, a little bit.
Right, but I'll go first. So you're saying that if these countries are greatly benefiting by having British workers come into their country and work, are you telling me they're going to go, yeah, they're not contributing to the European Union, but now I also want to take out these very productive workers who are helping my businesses do well. Like they're going to do that. They're going to cut off their nose to spite their face as well.
Well, my whole point with that is not necessarily focusing on workers per se, but just that I'm more for a flat Earth society where I think we're more efficient when we eliminate borders and not expand them.
And here's the other thing about exports is that, that people say, oh, Germany, they're going to impose all these tariffs. No, Germany's not. One of Germany's largest industries is auto exports, and Britain is one of their largest buyers of cars, okay? Are you really telling me they're going to say, no, let's tank our economy to also spite Britain? Don't sell cars. Sell cars with a huge...
I think you underestimate Europeans and their spitefulness.
But Nick, you got to look at the politicians made a gigantic move, right? But at the same time, that's only a handful of people. The whole economy isn't going to suddenly stop. People aren't going to suddenly the economy is based on confidence. That's all it is. There's no gold, which to me has always been a silly idea. The entity, to me, money and currency is just a silly concept. But I won't get into that conversation. Maybe 2017.
I think that's a very fascinating point.
A universal basic income, if you want to have that conversation in 2017.
Very heated conversation.
Well, I think we can tease our next podcast. Maybe we'll do an economics podcast because I need to re-up on my economics. I know that Steven's an expert in that field, and Ghost has some things to say about it as well. So maybe that's what we'll do for our next podcast.
I'll table that, but going back to the Brexit, yeah, it might have consequences now and hurt them. But when they can free up, and now they'll have total control of their economics and all their fiscal and
their their monetary policy. They have complete control.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, monetary policy. Yeah, exactly.
But the other interesting thing is because they weren't part of the economic zone, they actually did have substantially more economic power over their own currency.
Right, but they didn't have all of the policies to go back.
Yeah,
now they're
every
totally by themselves.
They couldn't trade with anyone that didn't have an agreement with the EU. They can now negotiate deals that, and
right.
This is one of my huge criticisms of Obama is that he tried to influence the Brexit vote by saying you're going to the back of the line, and then as soon as the vote came through, they're like, we'd be very happy to negotiate this deal with you. Speaking of involved in foreign elections.
Yeah, no, I think it's gonna, there is the fear that Nick brings up of nationalism, and if they put up high tariffs and start to do things,
well, that's protectionism. That's not nationalism.
Protectionism. But to me, that is a concern if it's done in detriment to globalization in a lot of ways. If you're trying to prop up industries that shouldn't exist, in the long run, yes, help your country transition and protect the automakers, for example. Don't let every single automaker go out of business because China can outproduce and make and other people can make better quality cars than us.
Well, the interesting case.
Not saying they can, but
the interesting case about the argument against protectionism is that China has such structural advantages, and the Chinese government owns a whole huge stakes in their corporations and gives them huge advantages when competing in global export markets. So the argument that everyone is just free trading and all of a sudden we're just going to slap tariffs on them. No, everyone's cheating. And ideally, yes, if we just didn't tariff people, we'd be better off just on a fundamental level. It's just it's really a hard thing. You can't sell that to people that like you have to lose your job because this country is gonna outcompete you because they don't have labor laws. They don't have to pay their health insurance.
No. I completely agree. Protect people, by all means, but there has to be vision to see that this industry might not be able to survive. So, yes, this worker today I'm going to help protect, but I need to make sure that the workers growing up are trained to do something better, either be better skilled in this field and be able to advance it, or something different.
And this is why I think you get rid of like the minimum wage, so we can get people to work at the lowest possible level. And if we get rid of a whole bunch of unskilled labor that's flooding into the country, we can then find out like a reasonable wage. Or if people are too expensive to hire, we can automate and create whole new industries developed around creating that automation and creating that process.
Well, I think this actually transitions to my next point pretty well. As intriguing as my lack of knowledge on economics in this whole situation.
Sorry,
you guys are doing
I
great.
got off track there.
Yeah, you guys are dueling back and forth, and it's great, but I have no idea what any of that. So, so let's veer back a little bit and discuss. Okay, so yeah, there's Brexit, and then there's Trump, major populism sort of revolution, and then you Ghost, you touched on the sort of, obviously someone who actually is going to address the immigration issue. So my broader question is, let's look ahead now to 2017, and kind of what are some like realistic goals? Like what are we hoping that if we have this podcast a year from now, what are we hoping that we commented on, or what that has happened over in the next year, that will actually, maybe we'll be in a better situation this time around than next time around. I'll let you start, Stephen, and then I'll let Ghost go because I know he has a lot to say about this.
Yeah, me to start. A couple of topics that I would love to talk about: economics, and in those, universal basic income, and also I'm a futurist, so I want to see what this world would be like if we automated everything. I guess we'll see what the future holds. To me, there's a big emphasis on personal responsibility, so that trend is something I'm going to look through in politics and in the media, and for sports, it's a year to look forward to.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead, Ghost.
Sorry. In the coming year, I also share. I do want to see what the future looks like. I do want to see people come out with creative new technologies. I don't want them to be constrained. And I'm actually for like unfettered testing. As long as people consent to it. It's like, hey, do you have an experimental cancer drug? I don't want to run it through the FDA for 2 years. I want like immediately trying to cure the worst diseases. I want to see the newest technology. I want all these things that are on the edge of technology to come out so we can just see what exciting future we have in store. Or maybe it is just boring consumerist phones and all this. Maybe staring at screens is our future. As far as the immigration discussion goes, I want, sanctuary cities defunded for sure. I want all of our states to have to follow. I want all of our cities to have to follow the law. I don't want people picking and choosing what laws to follow. I think that's very unreasonable. And I would like to see Trump make some real progress on free market reforms. I'd like him to cut the corporate tax rate. I'd like people to bring more business back here. I'd like him to cut individual tax rates so people have more money that they can spend and use for whatever they want. I want people taking more money out of tax havens and bringing it home so we can spend it here or abroad. I hope that that's what we're talking about next year is how great these tax cuts are and how great, not having mandated health insurance is. And, keeping just the provisions that people really want, the people, your parents' health insurance and the pre-existing conditions, which I'm all for getting rid of, but I understand it's politically suicide to get rid of things like that.
Wait, why are you for getting rid of that? Just to stop you for a second. Why is pre-existing conditions a bad thing?
Here's my problem with pre-existing conditions is that the only pre-existing conditions I want not to be discriminated against are specifically genetic conditions, specifically like, you have ALS or you have like some weird, strange disease that's passed on through your family. What I don't want as pre-existing conditions are like diabetes, things that are caused by lifestyle. Like we kept smoking out of pre-existing conditions, which I think was a very good choice. But I think poor lifestyle choices like being overweight and eating too much and drinking too much sugar, eating too much sugar, I'd rather spend that money on like a concerted effort to convince people to have a healthy lifestyle. Because that'll make us live longer, that'll bring down our healthcare costs and allow us all to pay less for health insurance.
I think that's ultimately the crux of I think connecting social responsibility and personal responsibility, I think that's really the key because healthcare is something that I definitely want to see addressed, whether it's maintained or obviously changed for the better. Ultimately, we really need to emphasize personal responsibility in our society. And you know, while I don't agree with getting rid of pre-existing conditions, I understand the logic there. Yeah, we shouldn't be paying more money as a state for people that are just choosing to eat McDonald's every day.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
Healthcare has always been reactive, though, and I think it's slowly changing into saying, what can we proactively do, eat better, whatever capacity, to not have diabetes and not do that. But America is in a reactive sense of like, we just treat symptoms. We don't
treat the symptoms, not the disease.
But
the social cost versus the personal cost, that actually transitions to one of my other things. I think a multicultural society does not work. And let me be very clear. A multi-ethnic society can work and can function very well. I think, you know, multiple groups of people can function, but you cannot have parallel societies, parallel tribes. You know, you can't have people, because for them, you know, the tribe is their key. You know, we have like these Chinatowns, you have like these ghettos, or you have these barrios where people, you know, they're really focused on that. They don't speak English. They just speak Spanish or Chinese. They don't really work too much with people outside that community. I don't think that works. Getting along, speaking, you know, at least similar languages and working together, I think that works so much better than everyone just pairing off in their own tribes. And because then they're like, okay, I have to work for these people around me, rather than, okay, well, wait, I'm part of America, the person, because that's going to cost everyone. Instead, it's like, well, yeah, but it's this majority of people over here paying taxes are going to pay the cost of me being unhealthy, not my group of people. They're not paying the penalty for this.
And well, ultimately, what I would say, as far as you know, to sort of to piggyback off of that point, I think that's sort of that culture that we've created for ourselves in America. It's very much of a look out for yourself and not look out for anybody else. I think this is ultimately, and we can discuss this in the next podcast, the scourge of capitalism. And I know you'll both laugh at this, but my whole reasoning for that is I think we've created as when profit and when making money is the number one goal in society, we forget about things like, oh, caring about your neighbor, and these sort of things. And while it does have monetary costs for us, and you can make a logical argument, you know, you're healthy, everybody's healthy, it costs everybody less money. People don't think about things that way. But that's a whole other topic that we can discuss capitalism at another notion. Because honestly,
I just want to give like a quick blurb on my thoughts on what you said there, and I think the problem is that we don't have it's not individually determined. You know, the fact that you can pass off the costs of your bad decisions onto the collective with no consequences. It should be that you are the one who bears the brunt of your bad decisions, not the society, you know, because then you're not feeling the cost of your decisions, and therefore you're less likely to change your behavior if people are just like, oh, you shouldn't do that, rather than, oh, crap, I can't pay my bills because I won't stop eating unhealthy. You know, it's like there's differences there.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think, and like I said, we'll touch upon this
we'll address this later
in the next time. But I think that that's a very interesting discussion, and have another time. Stephen, do you have any more thoughts on this particular issue, or should we move on?
No. I'll allow you to provide your concluding thoughts.
Okay. Well, actually, I have one other question. This is gonna be the hardest question that I ask either of you, and probably anybody in the audience. Which celebrity death this year was the worst for you, and why? Because we've had a lot. We had Prince, obviously Carrie Fisher just recently, to name just a few that are just coming to me off the top of my head. I mean, we've a lot of really great people left us this year, and it's very much quite sad. So, Ghost, which one made you the most sad this year?
Who had the most impact on my life? I'd probably have to say Carrie Fisher. I mean, that's such an iconic role as Princess Leia, and to watch her go from, you know, burnout junkie back in shape, back out of rehab, back to good health, you know, and then make her way into the new Star Wars movies. And don't get me wrong, I didn't really love Force Awakens. I thought she did good in it, but it was nice because like I grew up with her as like such an iconic character, and then I got to see her redemption. I got to see her work her way through her problems and improve her life. And
she looked so young in Rogue One. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and you know, it's like she's 60, and like I get it. She did a lot of coke probably, and she made a lot of poor decisions when she's young. I mean, who in Hollywood doesn't? But it was just so soon. And that, I mean, I didn't know much about Debbie Reynolds, but that's
well,
tough
another
too.
icon
I mean,
too, certainly. I mean, that whole family, and I feel for her brother and her son. I mean, to lose two people so close to your family so quickly and just so suddenly.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she was in the hospital. It was just she was flying to LA or something of that nature. And yeah, for me personally, my biggest loss, and not necessarily that I was a huge Prince fan, but just I felt as far as somebody who can appreciate the sort of the creativity in music, and I really think this is very off topic, but I think music is just generally really crappy these days. There, not that there isn't good music. There's plenty of good music out there, but it's not being played on the radio. And for Prince, he was someone who really challenged a lot of those status quo lines, and I think all of this popular crap music should be thankful of Prince because all the stuff that we've come to kind of accept as norm, he really set a bar for and set a standard, and was really a revolutionary for his time. And also, personally, one of my favorite Super Bowl moments was him playing in Purple Rain in the Rain in 2005 with the Colts Bears Super Bowl. I mean, that to me was, as like how old was I? Like a 13-year-old kid. That was one of the coolest moments I can remember. And also too, I had money on the Colts that game, so that helped too. But yeah, it was so to me, it's been 2016 has been a rough year. I mean, maybe not if you're happy about Trump, but for us on this side of the aisle, it has been an interesting year. And to all of the progressives out there, to all the people who are trying to fight for these certain issues, who are angered by a lot of the proposals that my counterpart Ghost has been advocating for. We just got to pick ourselves up and move forward into 2017. It's a new year. It's a new time. My personal New Year's resolution is to get fit. I really have gained a lot of weight recently, so that is my big goal. Also, another tangent. Working way off topic. Steven, go ahead. What celebrity deaths affected you the most, and why?
I mean, it feels like they just keep rolling. So to say that one punch out of the last 50 has hurt, it's like, wow, I can't believe there've been a lot. Muhammad Ali passing, to me, he was always one of my favorite stories to read up about and to hear about.
Really fascinating figure, certainly.
Like, I don't know, what kind of amazes me is just how many greats and so across the board, so many wonderful musicians, athletes, scientists, astronauts, and it's not just like, oh, one or two. It's, I think, in every major category from across society, someone notable has gone.
Yeah, no, it feels like every group lost somebody this year. I mean, I don't know if that happens every year and we're just reacting, but I mean, that's a really valid point. I mean, even astronauts. We lost one of our greatest astronauts this year. So,
Dalia.
So it's strange that you have every kind of group mourning in some capacity or another. So that to me is more of the shocker, if you will. It's not just like, oh.
And Alan Rickman was this year too, right? Snape, that was this year, right? Yeah, no, and I mean, he is as far as my favorite Harry Potter character, I was certainly. That, I mean, he creates such and in Die Hard, in so many movies that he's been in, he's just such a force in those movies. I mean, Snape would not have been the same character without him. Give me another actor that would have played that role just as well. I mean, they just don't exist. He's exactly how I picture him in the book. And yeah, no, it's a very interesting year. But we pull up and we continue on. Do either of you guys have anything you want to discuss related to this year? Until I want to go do my sports predictions live, but I'll do that last. So, anybody else?
Yeah. To everyone on the other side of the aisle, I'm kind of in the center of the aisle as best I can. Go convince your friends that you're right. Go make the case. Make your case as best you can. Argue it as strongly as possible. Bring all the evidence, all the facts you have to bear, and go change some minds. Don't try to just like talk to politicians, okay? Politicians have already made up their mind. Whoever donated to them, that's what they think, okay? Try to convince everyday Americans of what you think and convince them it's right. I mean, that's the only thing you do. That's how you enact real change at the local level. I mean, you can vote for the right government officials, talk to your politicians as well. Try to gauge what they think.
And at least pressure them too. I mean, you can write them letters, even if they don't listen to them. Just they have to, legally, technically, or to be any sort of good grace, have to at least attempt to look at them. I remember when I worked in a congressional office, we received hundreds of notes every day about, gun control. And while they were probably absurd and we, maybe laughed them off a little bit, the reality is that those are still concerned citizens, so we still had to make note about all of them. We still had to note that, wow, we got received 300 signatures. Even if that's not enough to sway the congressman's mind, it is still something that you still made your voice heard. And even if you don't think that that did something, to sit out, there's a great line from my favorite band, Rise Against. They have a quote, and it says, "Neutrality means that you don't really care because the struggle goes on whether or not you're there," something of that nature. Basically stating that if you say you don't care, if you're like, oh, I don't vote, it's not important, then basically you're just letting the suffering continue. You're taking by you pretending to be Switzerland, the war doesn't end. And I think that's something important for whatever side of the aisle you rest on. Always, you owe it to the people that are suffering the most in the world to understand what's going on, and to if that needs to be a New Year's resolution, to make 2017 the year that you actually start to give a fuck, or whatever, however to put it. So that would be my wish for everybody, regardless of what you think. If you think that Trump may actually save us, I would disagree, but I respect your right to tell me I'm wrong. And I think we have shied away as a culture from wanting to tell and argue hard truths, and rather just want to be surrounded by people that agree with us. And I think if anybody can have a goal in 2017, along with being fit, is to attempt to talk to people who disagree with you, to engage in new topics, and to really think outside the box, because that's really how we're actually going to make things better.
Yeah, I think also for the people out there, please stop doing fake hate crime hoaxes, because when there's actual instances of people being abused, pull out a camera. Please just record it. I'm sick and tired of all these hoaxes, and I want to be able to believe people. And remember, everyone has a camera, okay? Everyone has a camera, and the only way you can confirm what happened is to bring out a camera. But more importantly, say something and try to make the person doing wrong feel bad for it. Don't just be a witness and say, "Oh, I saw it." No, do something about it.
Yeah, to back that, I would just kind of generally emphasize personal responsibility in 2017 in whatever capacity, you see that fit, because I think everyone has their different ways of improving, educating themselves, and just, I don't know, personal responsibility to be a better person and owning what I do. Or support one side or the other, own it, and have an honest discussion with the other side, trying to see their perspective. I believe so much. So, open dialogue and just take
Well, that was weird. I don't know.
Ownership of your life. 15.
There was some weird buzzing. I don't know. We'll have to see how that comes up in the actual
actually was
podcast.
all cutting out. We'll see if it works. I just want to agree with that sentiment. Have those discussions. I mean, that's how I came to change my opinion on guns. I used to be for gun control, but
I know you used to be. That's true.
I studied history, and I studied history. I talked to a lot of people who understood a lot of things about guns. I read a lot of statistics. I read a lot of studies. And it's just it's you know what? The Constitution is right. The government doesn't have a right to legislate this thing, just like they don't have a right to legislate our speech. The First and Second Amendment are very important.
Yeah, and Stephen, you're gonna hate, and I hate myself for saying this, but we have this friend. His name is Taylor. I'm not gonna mention his last name because I'm not giving him that much credit. But him and I argue back and forth about why we lost the election, why Hillary lost the election, and he always says it's a failure to listen. And I don't necessarily think it was necessarily a failure to listen. I think it was a failure to underestimate that there are people who vehemently disagree with the sort of status quo Obama plans, or of what the general consensus is amongst Democrats and lean left people as far as how to solve these problems. For example, if you look at something like immigration or the minimum wage, it's pretty cut and dry. And the tactic, and I do disagree with this. I myself, unfortunately, have done this, but you tend to attack the other person to say a bigot, or there's someone who's narrow-minded or ignorant. And I mean, the right does this too. I mean, both sides do this. We kind of try to belittle and undermine the other person. And I think a big goal for 2017 is we need to stop doing that specifically. You can certainly disagree vehemently with the idea of a border fence, but the people who are, while there are those people who are trying to build a border fence that are racist, it is not everybody. And we you lose the argument instantly. You never win. You never change minds if you go at it from that perspective to begin with, rather than looking at it as a, this person really, maybe they're misinformed. Maybe they're looking at statistics a different way. Maybe they're looking at it and this is the conclusion they came to, and you have to respect that to a certain extent.
One of my friends put this really spiritual, being up in San Francisco. He said at one point in his life when he finally grew up, he tried to see people not as the body they hold, but the spirit that's in that body, and give that spirit a chance to understand where it's been, and it's trapped in a body, so it might have certain viewpoints or certain things about it that might not be true once it sees a different perspective, but to give that chance to hear it out and to interact with people, and not just again judge them with the general brush that we can call someone Democrat or Republican.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Ghost, do you have any additional thoughts or things to talk about, or we should wrap this up? We're a little over an hour, I think, at this point. So.
Yeah, and I just want to say it is nice to hear card-carrying Democrats admit that it is a bad tactic to just yell bigot. Because I was pretty confident about 2018 when I heard the same tactics that were attempted the entire election over, intellectual discussion. It was just, what? Our problem wasn't that we were just calling people racist instead of talking about the merits or the demerit or the problems with immigration, all the things that are happening, instead it was just, no, we just didn't yell loud enough. Seemed to be what the vibe I was getting from the news, is that if we just yell loud enough next year, California will get more electoral votes and we'll win.
Well, it's the old, and going back to sports, it's the old adage: you don't play to not lose. Any team that plays not to lose, if you're a 2-touchdown favorite and you play timid and you play not to lose and you just run the ball and don't actually take any chances, don't run your normal plays, you're gonna lose. Whereas if you play to win, that's what you want to be. You want to be in a position. Democrats have constantly, and I've always felt like this, that Democrats have constantly failed to sell their own beliefs, have failed to advocate for the things. If you really believe in a minimum wage, then actually have a coherent argument for it, and actually have an argument that inspires hope. And actually, it isn't just if you don't believe it, you must not care about Mexicans, kind of a thing like that. Like that's where I think the left has failed a lot. And not saying that the general beliefs that they have, because I certainly agree with this. I believe on a minimum wage, but it's how we sell these ideas. And I think conservatives have gotten so much better at that than liberals. And I think 2017 needs to be the year of doing that.
Democrats have no feeling. In my opinion, Democrats have all the logic, but they have no feeling whatsoever.
Oh, I disagree completely.
Well, of course you do, but I mean, but on its surface, like.
But minimum wage. Here's the problem with minimum wage, though. Let me explain. Like your case has always been to sell the minimum wage as a phased process. And the problem is there's this horrible logical inconsistency. The argument is always the minimum wage is going to give everyone more income. They're going to have much better jobs. They're going to get paid more. However, because this policy is so great, we're going to phase it in to help employers. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do that. If something was great, you would put it right away. And just, when we decriminalized pot, we just said, no, this is wrong for putting people in jail for smoking pot. We're going to legalize it January 1st. Okay, but with minimum wage, we know it hurts. We know it's a bad policy. So that's why they segment it. So either they won't be up for election by the time the penalties of its effects come in, and the next people have to hold the bag for the consequences of it.
We can get into this when we talk about economics, but that's just. But you have to think about cash flow as a businessman, as a business person. How if. With pot, to just say we're not going to start we're going to start collecting money from dispensaries and we're not going to charge people and arrest them. That's saying we're not doing work. But to then what you're saying with minimum wage is you're telling a business to pay out more, which is them doing work. So you're not reducing, and you're increasing the effort on a business and not reducing the effort. So it's not the same.
No, I think it's very much the same. It's very much the same because you're basically saying that this policy is going to make people's lives better. However, you're going to have to wait for your lives to be made better, and this happens all the time. You can't.
But how can you tell a company that has no money, that has excellent? So that's like my landlord saying you're going to pay me 2.5 times more rent.
Well, because
I'm like, I don't have that. Well. Yeah,
All right, well,
I mean,
either
under
way,
some
we can
contract,
talk about the minimum
but
wage.
he can't come under contract and just change it arbitrarily from month to month. So I mean, like,
Well, this is why the contract should not be the government's business. It should be between the employer and the individual who is employed.
right? I mean, again, we can talk about economics because I do think that there's valid arguments in abolishing the minimum wage.
All right, well, this has been the world's greatest tease, you guys. We will touch on this next week. We will discuss economics. And as you can see, it's already started to become a little tested, so that's good. Because I know nothing about this, so this is better that you guys can go back and forth, and I will.
But you still want to sell it.
Yeah, I just want to sell it. Yeah, that's what it's like.
You have to let us pass it so you can read it.
Well, ultimately,
in the
I
words
think
of Ms. Pelosi.
I do have some economic arguments too as to why the minimum wage is good. I just don't want to get into it at this point.
We'll definitely leave this for a later date. I think that'd be a great idea.
But okay, so yeah, let's going back to summing up 2016. It's been a crazy year, but I think that we can all learn a lot of things about both our ourselves and our country and the world as a whole. It certainly was an interesting year, and hopefully 2017 will be half as interesting as this year. Now, for the last thing I wanted to make to say before we sign off, my grand sports prediction, as I've been telling everybody that will listen, is this is going to be the year of rematches. And the year of the trilogy. So my bold predictions right now is that we are going to have a Giants Patriots Super Bowl Part 3. We are going to have a Cleveland and Golden State Championship Part 3. We are going to have a Cubs and Indians rematch Part 2. We are going to get a Villanova North Carolina rematch Part 2. And I think hockey. Oh, hockey doesn't matter. Those are my predictions.
I have two titles for two of those rematches, actually. You've got Revenge of the Brady and Return of the Eli and Revenge of the Steph.
Oh, I think the Patriots win the third time. And I think that the Golden State.
That's why it's a return of the Eli, but he's gonna lose. He's gonna return to the Super Bowl after not being there for half a decade now.
So he's the Emperor, and Darth Vader is Brady.
Brady should be the Emperor, but the Emperor is going to win this time.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this analogy works, but whatever.
Actually, no. Brady would be Vader, and Belichick would definitely be the Emperor.
Oh, Belichick's definitely the Emperor anyways.
Is there any argument that the Patriots are the dark side?
Oh, yeah. No, I was already crushed when I heard that Tom Brady was a Republican, but I guess that is true, so. I've been rooting against Peyton Manning for years on the assumption that Tom Brady wasn't a Republican.
Did you really expect anything else?
No, I guess not. It's fair. And he kind of knew it when he did the whole Trump tweet thing.
Oh, that doesn't necessarily mean he's a Republican. That could just mean he wants to keep Hillary Clinton as far away from power as possible, which I think is a noble task.
No, that's what your whole job is. So
the memes, man. It was the Pepe the Frog won the election. You saw it.
Yes, indeed. All right, so yeah, those are my final predictions. Again, just sort of, I'll say my little concluding sentence, and I'll let you guys give some little concluding shout outs. Just want to shout out to all my friends and family. It's been a great year. We'll get through the next one together. To us progressives, we gotta pick ourselves up from this defeat, and 2017's got to be a year of work, and 2018's got to be a year of even more work. And to everybody out there that's listening, all 5 of you. Thank you for listening. We will be producing more podcasts this next coming year. Very much looking forward to phase 2 of Diploma Sports. Want to say thank you to Ghost for joining me on this expedition, and Steven for joining us. We hope to certainly have you on more of these, especially the minimum wage one, which will be very much interesting. So yeah, that is my sign off. It's been a great year. Happy 2016, everybody.
Yeah.
Any concluding thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say to my fellow libertarians out there, let's move on from Gary Johnson. Okay, that dog will not hunt. He
will smoke pot though. That is something he will do.
Please, just let's exercise the demons of Gary Johnson and try to bring a principled libertarian candidate forth at least, so we can actually sell our ideas and our policies to the country instead of just going, no, we're not Hillary Clinton and not Donald Trump, and we like undocumented immigrants. We won't call them illegal aliens. Can we please just bring in a sane candidate? And to my friends and family, thank you for all the love and support. And I look forward to this uncertain adventure in 2017. And I look forward to having a chance for a better future. Steve, you got anything you'd like to say before you sign off?
Dude, thank you guys, Ghost and SE, for having me. This was a lot of fun. I look forward to continuing our conversations, as diverse and wide as they get. And to the fellow economists, stay updated and keep updating your forecasts and opinions according to new data.
Yeah, everybody please look at data.
Otherwise, Nick, oh, sorry.
It's fine.
Have a good one, you guys.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and thank you to our listeners. Remember to check us out on social media, and please give us comments and let us know what you think. And we'll see you in 2017. Thank you, and thanks for listening to Diploma Sports, an intelligent intersection of sports and politics. My name is SC. We have Ghost and Steven. Have a good night, everybody.